As student protests rock the national capital, the big picture emerging is that the state can't ignore the students. On this issue, I am joined by Rahul Verma from Center for Policy Research, who explores the question of electoral dominance, who explores the issue of political legitimacy, who also explores the parallels with Anna Hazare movement and what gives BJP the strength to face the nationwide protests. Now, without wasting any time, let me just start a conversation with Rahul. Rahul, is this different from Anna Hazare's protest?
Thank you, Karthikeya, first of all, for having me. See, each movement is different because the time period and context is different. So there is differences because, like there's a 15-year gap. But also, if you think about the 2011 Anna Hazare protest, that was the first big protest that UPA government had seen after coming to power since 2004. Whereas this government has seen multiple protests. So in that sense, it's different. Where I think there is similarity is the issue. So last time the issue was corruption. This time the issue is of administrative failure to conduct exams. But in some ways, these issues are cross-cutting. They are going to cross-cut across party lines, across identity groups. And that's why they are much more formidable if they manage to cross certain threshold in terms of mobilizing people.
Okay. But this is also different because the protest is coming from the social base of Bharatiya Janata Party itself. It is not coming from the so-called Shoshet Pirit Varg, where Bharatiya Janata Party expanded. It is coming from the non-quota classes. So what is it telling us?
And so that's why I think BJP should be more cautious and careful in dealing with this protest, especially because of the sociology of the protest that you pointed out. The protest over the UGC notification a few months back, especially among upper caste students. And here I think this is much more of a middle class sort of like youth and their parents who have come out for these protests. So yes, you are absolutely right. And that's why it is for the first time, two things is making this difficult for BJP, or three things. First one, I think all other protests that happened against the BJP government in last 12 years had something to do with either policy differences or ideological platforms. And that's why for every big protest, BJP was able to mount a counter-offensive or a counter-narrative. This time, BJP does not have a counter-narrative because it deals with the question of administrative failure, of ability to deal with sort of like conducting exams. The second thing that you rightly pointed out is about the sociology of these protests. See, for a large number of Indians in a developing economy like India, these competitive exams and exams to institutions of higher education are more mediums of upward social mobility. And once the state basically consistently fails in being able to conduct these exams, it basically strikes at the very core of the promise that there is some upward mobility. Now, I'm not at all saying exam leaks are only happening during this regime or under Dharmendra Pradhan. They have been happening for a long period of time, but the frequency of those leaks have increased, and that has basically created much more anxiety among these middle class youth and their parents. The third thing, which is because this is the base of the BJP, I think the government was not able to anticipate the outpouring of people on Monday, July 20th. When your adversaries are planning a protest against you, you can sort of like estimate or have some sort of intelligence gathered around who are going to organize, who are going to come out. But when your own base is coming out and which is non-partisan in nature, in some ways, this kind of issue, then it makes very, very difficult for you to assess what is going to happen.
Absolutely. Do you feel that BJP is finding it hard to frame it in an ideological lens because it's an administrative issue?
Yeah, how can you, it's very, very difficult. You can at best, and I'm not There may be some angle of these kind of nature. At best, you can make it that, this is sponsored by some sort of like foreign government, or this is to destabilize Modi government. But uh, like, you cannot still bypass the issue for what it is happening, right? You cannot create an adversary out of it. And so at some level, I do think, and perhaps the two steps that has been taken by the government, first, JP Nadda meeting the protesters on Monday, representatives of them saying that we are going to discuss this in the parliament. And second, I think Prime Minister's tweet in the morning that strict action are going to be taken against those who were involved in these paper leaks. I think they are the first steps, first good steps that the government has taken to deal with the issue, but perhaps they need to look a little bit more sincere and a little bit more engaging in dealing with this issue. And especially, see, think of it, this protest is also coming at a time in last 2 to 3 months, government has been facing different kinds of allegations and charges. First, the theft and corruption in Ram Temple sort of premises. Then there were allegations about involvement of BJP leaders in land deals in Madhya Pradesh. Then there were allegations and like, that there was uproar over ethanol blending. Now, I'm not saying everywhere it's the fault of the central government or the people
Correct.
at the highest level are involved, but at this moment, government is facing a serious headwind, and it does not have a narrative to say that, we have an India rising story, especially when you have increasing unemployment and people cannot see a clear paths of upward mobility. So not just middle classes. Like few months back, we had seen in Noida sort of like workers coming out to protest because their salaries are so low that they cannot meet two ends of the day. And so I think this protest, it would be a mistake to basically say that this is all about just the examination leak. I think that's the core of it. But in sometimes these protests
Are you
also
saying that
carry.
this is more than examination leak? Are you saying
Yeah.
are you saying that you see generally protests in India because of BJP's political dominance have become dealing with electoral outcomes.
Yes.
A lot of sociologists, psephologists say that those protests were very sectional in nature. They were not
Yeah.
broad-based like the one which we witnessed now.
Yes.
But even if I keep that aside, that those protests were sectional in nature, it did not have a political outcome, perhaps a little bit by Bharat Jodo Yatra, but that was a Padayatra. It was
Yes.
not a protest. Bharat Jodo Yatra was a Padayatra.
Yes.
So that was a different way of processing your politics for your electorate. So my question is, well, you can't afford to ignore it. You are not able to frame it from the context of national security. It is part of your own vote-based bank, but then you need to resolve it also.
Yes. So you must engage with it. So the reason I'm saying, like what I was saying earlier, that I think it also carries some frustrations and anxiety overall in terms of economy not growing, people's sort of like path of mobility not being clear. It carries that sort of like anxiety of Indian youth as well, and we know that this is a fact, right? Like that economy has sort of like stagnated or slowed down. Now, what you are also asking me, like, what can BJP do at this point of time, right?
They have set up
My
fast-track courts, but I don't think it's
Yes,
cutting much ice. The Prime Minister has tweeted.
yes, but I think, see, all of this is happening like in last 48 to 72 hours. There is going to be a trouble that who are the clear sort of like leaders or negotiators from the side of the protesters, and whether what we know about this government of last 12 years, they are not going to basically in some ways surrender at the demands of protesters. This we like but they are pragmatic to backtrack. We have seen that in the case of land acquisition. We have seen that happening at the during the farm protest. But this government, because of its electoral sort of like comfort, electoral majority in the parliament, can elongate this
Like, for
kind of
example, if you look at this picture, you know, these are the two people belonging to a religious sect, have nothing to do with the exam, but they have come there. So obviously people feel that, you know, despite the fact you say that this is apolitical, it has become highly political. You know, it's a Gen Z language. We, you know, we are apolitical, but whatever you do is very political.
See, Karthike, you asked me a very, very interesting question, and we don't have a good answer to it. So all we can do is have a conversation to think about it. And this is to do with this delinking of protest and electoral politics. I think what is happening in India is that it's a failure on part of opposition parties that they are not able to create these movements, or in some ways they don't carry these movements or public sentiments with them. Bharat Jodo Yatra was the only instance. Other times, it is basically like a public outburst or anger among certain sections of the society, which is what the opposition tries to ride on, right? And that's why perhaps at the time of electoral elections, they don't get benefit of not being present in the society, like they don't have organizational muscle, mobilizational capacity, and so that's what we see during elections, that this does not go far. So that's one comment on sort of like where you are seeing this movement as political. Basically, opposition parties, people who are connected with different kinds of political spectrum, have all joined this sort of like movement in some ways to support perhaps the cause, but also to mount a pressure on the government. Uh, but the problem that's the second issue, where like because it's less likely that government is going to give in to all demands of the protest movement very soon. Like they will at least like to draw this out for some
Okay,
more time,
let me come to
but they
the,
do need to engage, because not engaging will also create cost for them.
you know, let me come to the most, the controversial, most sensitive aspect, you know. Gen Z word has become highly politicized because, you know, Gen Z, the so-called, see, Gen Z came after the Velvet, the so-called revolution or the lateral protest of 2011, Tunisia and Tahrir. But, you know, the response of the state was very hard. And what happened subsequently was that even harder forms of political arrangements came to existence. Now, when the Gen Z protests when they took in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, they ended up hitting the traditional structures in politics. So Gen Z is seen very suspiciously, very suspiciously. So how do we? Is it a Gen Z? Is this a Gen Z stuff? Because they try to couch it in the language of, you know, Gandhian. It's the moral arc, but it lacks the discipline from both ends. You know, and the entire affair is also over-policed, which I find very surprising on part of the state. But they want to do this Gandhian thing, but they lack the discipline. Gandhi called off movements because of lack of discipline. So, you know, this postmodern mishmash needs to be understood in a frame. That if it's a spontaneous reaction of our youth of what is going wrong, what do they think has gone wrong? Is it the only education thing on which they are reacting? I'm sure they're not reacting on corruption. I'm sure they're not reacting on larger issues of governance.
No, true. I think so. There are multiple things. One can say that the youth that has come out has all kinds of things. Basically, they're talking like there are people who are talking about anti-reservation also. There are people who think education system is going down because privatization of education. So you have all kinds of interest group. Even if you want to think of the exam as the core issue of this movement, even there are going to be differences, and that's where seasoned leadership, political wisdom comes, where someone tries to join all things together and articulate set of things about what this movement is. See, maybe that may happen in next 2 3 weeks. Till Monday, July 20th, everyone had dismissed this movement. We didn't think that it can even go beyond social media and
Yes.
memes. if you had gone to Jantar Mantar on 16th or 17th of July, which I did went while I was walking, like there were hardly 150 people.
Yes, yes.
And so we all thought like, this may not go anywhere.
It looked like a
But
weak cup
once
of
the,
tea. You know?
huh, but once Sonam Wangchuk was sort of like picked up from Jantar Mantar spot, that, as you rightly pointed out, over policing, use of sort of like lathis and weapons creates the imagery which many struggling movements want, right? It then basically generates more sympathy. And then people like look at a lot of conversation, and I'm basically, I may seem mean on this, which is like a lot of conversation is like now people are unhappy or angry, not because of the issue, but they're saying, how can the state not listen to children? How are you basically raising your hand and your lathis on these 16-year, 20-year, 24-year kids, right? And so I think it has also now not just moral, it has also become emotional. And so you will see parents on cameras basically very emotionally charged. But there has to be, like now we have also seen in last 1 week, many social activists, civil society leaders have reached to this site. They are having conversation with Abhijit Dipke and other people. Hopefully, they will articulate a core set of demands, and hopefully, they would also find a way to negotiate with the government on
You know,
where to.
Rahul, do you think that this Cockroach Janata Party, they have their own velocity, or Wangchuk gave them the velocity? You know, Kejriwal system got a velocity from Anna Hazare. Who gave them the velocity? You see, right now no one is talking about Wangchuk. There are a lot of things happening. That's number one. Who gave them that velocity? Is it Wangchuk or CJP on its own? You know, that's the part I want to decode.
Kartike, I don't have an answer to this. And I can, like, because I'm also hearing all kinds of theories. Some might basically border to conspiracy theories, right? Because the
Okay,
first thing
let me
is,
reframe the question. You see,
huh,
India against corruption and Anna Hazare's politics was about renewal of Indian politics, renewal of the soul of the politics, renewal of India's soul. BJP did it through governance style. Na khaunga, na khane dunga, pradhan sevak, sabki sarkar. So there was this politics is not talking about renewal. It is talking about a different sort of a change. Uh, you know, it is talking about person should resign. It is talking about specifics. There is no renewal. That renewal language is missing. Maybe the actors are
because
limited.
like, think of this movement started on Instagram, right? Within 2 days, this movement had gathered more than like 2 million followers. Most of these sort of like people who joined or are the leaders of what you will call as Cockroach Janta Party are at best in their early 30s. Now, this is not to say like, late 20s or early 30s is not the time to have deep thinking and think about deep and structural reforms. So I don't think they got time or they got into conversations to think about these big questions. They started with one point agenda as if they were just angry with what was happening with examination leaks. It was a reaction to Supreme Court Justice basically using the term cockroach. So in some ways, right, there hasn't been a conversation among these sort of like leaders of Cockroach Janta Party or those who are supporting a deep conversation on what kind of reform they are asking for. And that is a contradiction within this whole thing. But we need to remember most of these Gen Z revolutions, which happened in Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, also didn't have like a plan for serious structural reforms. They just wanted to pull down the existing government or regime, and they were able to succeed in most of those cases because their institutions and their electoral system is not as resilient or as absorbative as Indian democracy is. Even when there are a lot of questions about Indian democracy, like you could see that, like in 2024, BJP suffered setback. in 2026, BJP was still not able to make any significant gains in Tamil Nadu or Kerala. So in that sense, because our
But they
democracy
smashed, they
went
smashed
out,
into, they smashed into West Bengal.
yeah, it did, right? Like, so what I'm trying, like BJP did win big, but I think the dissatisfaction or anger, in some ways, if you want to see 2026, was against the incumbent, right? Incumbent in Bengal was
Acha,
TMC.
tell me, Rahul, tell me, does BJP stand a chance to lose political legitimacy despite enjoying political power?
Absolutely. The reason is very simple because one, it is coming from your own social base, and two, it is basically young students with what like it will create emotional sort of like sympathies among a large section of society if the government uses high-handedness to deal with them. And then three, you don't have a counter narrative why you are doing what you are doing. People are going to ask you, why can you not ask resignation of a minister uh, whose
Because
responsibility
the government
was to
doesn't want to
conduct these
look weak.
exams?
The government doesn't want to look weak. That's what
but
differentiates
but
them
but
from
that
UPA.
no, not true like that. But that is an argument that government can't say that we are not asking the resignation of a minister because we don't want to look weak, right? So like this is not an answer which people would like to listen to. Even supporters will ask questions on this, and so there is a possibility of losing the legitimacy, but it is also an opportunity to renew political legitimacy. The way you engage with them. See, think about it. For last 12 years, uh, no protest was allowed to start from Jantar Mantar. They were actually given space. So there must have been some calculation that if we give them space at Jantar Mantar, there are two possible outcomes. It can fade away, but it can also take off. Same thing happened when Sonam Wangchuk was picked up. There were two possible outcomes. One, it will fade away, or it can pick up. Now, after two instances, government should recalculate its sort of like risk matrix and figure out how to not lose political capital from here.
But you know how things change quickly. This gentleman was put behind bars under such stringent national security law, and now he is faced with a movement which the government is battling to deal with. But my larger question with you remains very sociological in nature, because you know that's the real reason for me to have this podcast. Is, do you feel that somehow BJP, as it Brahmastra, may end up making it about, you know, Modi versus rest, if they can't resolve it?
Sure, they can make it, but to my mind, showing engagement, and I'm not saying you have to like ask for the resignation. I'm not saying you have to meet all the demands, but unless you show at this point of time that you are willing to engage seriously and genuinely, uh, things can actually escalate in a direction which will cost BJP, especially when economy is stagnant. We are not in a position to provide large number of jobs that people are looking for. And so a government that seems at least in a mode of listening and caring carries legitimacy far longer than the government that engages in confrontation, and especially when you don't have a counter narrative. Like the buck stops here with the government, and you cannot sort of like just steam over it.
You know, all Gen Z protests delegitimize all the political players. But it's not happening like this here. There is a difference. Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they delegitimize everything, everyone. But it's not happening here. We can't straight jacket this protest. And it's not even all India. दिल्ली में ही हो रहा है, बाहर के लोग आ रहे हैं, but हो दिल्ली में रहा है.
Huh. But I think like one of the reasons why it won't be so. Yes, our opposition or political parties are weak in able to channelize public grievances. but our political system is not as closed as in other countries,
Yes.
right? Whatever you may call this, we have not reached to a point of like autocracy, where elections are rigged and
Yes.
your voices are
That's
not
true.
heard, because every sort of like instance of poll, people are able to vote out any party that they think is not deserving. That still creates more resilience and confidence in the
Okay,
system.
okay. Rahul, but I think the real point you made was that you might enjoy political power, but popular protests can create conditions for you to lose political legitimacy, and that's my takeaway from the conversation. I don't know whether it will happen or not, but that's a very good observation, and that's what political parties should be worried about. And this is all I had on this edition of On Point.